Now I'm a teacher. We spend extra time with the school.
That's what I thought. That goes on the and if you ever need engineering help, it's right here.
Yeah, oh yeah. But it's nice to have these on.
Get the right shirt on.
So I'm working on your presentation as we speak.
Good, how are you?
Oh,
Good to see you. How are you?
Well, see, I have one of the gaming chairs before. That's the best one I've ever done. Yeah, so it's nice, like, you know, bean bags, kind of nice things. Maybe hospital. Yeah. Well, when I was at the dentist, yeah, I was just using the gaming chairs. Yeah, I feel like yeah, all the they paperwork out and it's awesome, right? You know, yeah. I shell out the money and like, whenever like anybody walks by the front door, always like, she's not gonna do much. Oh, no, but she's
She'll melt their heart. That's laughing right there.
She's all part. Both of them.
We can get rid of it. That's not. I'll see you guys. Thank you, thank you.
My wife would dress her dog. Yeah, she put her as a pumpkin or a princess. That's good to Oh, that's so obviously the bigger dogs just gravitate to those. It's like
1 hour and 30 minutes.
yeah. Yeah. She did a pretty good job. I'm glad she said I Okay, maybe not that high. Okay, so what's that low?
There's like one license for like.
And I'd like to encourage council to come back up here.
How's it going? Good, how are you? How's it going?
What about your loyalty? What about your responsibility? I'll just make sure our city clerk is ready, and we'll start with that. All right, thank you. We are now back in session, and I'm going to turn it over next to Mayor Pro Tem Heredia.
Thank you. Great questions up here so far, everyone. Appreciate it. I've learned a lot of things that I hadn't thought of, and I was just speaking with Councilmember Mendoza about that with the sanitation district and how we allocate those funds to different departments. So I appreciate that conversation. Some of the things that I have questions on are the community development director position definitely was one of the topics I wanted to go over. And I wanted to find out from staff, I know we had talked about online permitting and getting software to do that. I can't really remember if we've moved forward with that. And I know for me, in the community development department, I know that there is probably room for added staff there. But as Councilmember Mendoza said, we haven't really talked about it as a body. And I like to have conversations and kind of get feedback and feel where you all sit before we make choices like that. So I would also like to possibly push that back. I am also looking at enforcement is really where like my passion lies for what we need. I think it's enforcement and not online permitting, and I think we can save money by doing those two things. As far as the Berry Street Park improvements, it's listed as $500K at Berry Street Park. I'm not sure what those improvements are exactly. I know there's some lighting. I just want to clarify, you know, is it just the lighting? I know there were some sidewalks we were gonna add over there that we do have our own permission to do. So can you just elaborate a little bit more on those improvements and what they are exactly?
Yes, ma'am. The 300,000 is dedicated to lighting improvements, and 250,000 is dedicated to, let's just say, frontage improvements, which include sidewalks, parking, additional parking enhancements. So that's the 550. Council's direction was to staff was to look at constructing sidewalks further east from the Berry Street Park out to Massachusetts and on the north side. And that's where that $50,000 that Measure 2 committee had allocated will be going towards, is the land work for that.
So separate from the ones that we control the property boundaries.
Correct.
And that was just for designing that 50,000, correct?
That 50,000 is more for land surveying, our contracted engineers, staff time to develop exhibits, this time to look at the feasibility of the construction of that project.
Okay, great, thank you. As far far as the Sage project was concerned, I being a hairdresser in beauty school, one of the things that we do is we learn practical application of what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. So I'm a huge fan of mentorship of students and how the practicality of what their future career is going to look like. It really helps students to realize their full potentials by working in an environment that's already what they see in their future. And I really feel like $20,000 is a great investment. My only question to that was, similar to Councilmember Altamirano's point, and I don't know if I fully grasped it, so I'm just gonna say it again. If we approve the $20,000 for this, and let's say they were to design a project that did the Broadway corridor, I feel like in my head a student isn't qualified to really finalize that project's plan. So will we still have to pay the say $70,000 or whatever to an actual architectural company on top of it?
Yes, at some point in time we would. So going back to the whole concept of applying for a grant, it just depends on what those grant requirements would be, what kind of plans that we would need to submit in support of that grant. So it could be something more along conceptual lines that the students could produce, or it could be something more formal that an architect would need to step in and produce as well. So we could take what the students do and then build upon it. I think that there could be value to just having those exploratory conversations with the community to see what people support and what the community would like to see more of, and then handing that over to a professional to kind of move that project forward.
And then I'd like to go over the Measure T expenditures. As far as the day camp was concerned, I know that was a concern. I did like what you had to say about the school district and gaining some access to the rec center, and some of the programming that we currently have is prohibitive of that. However, I do want kids to be protected and nurtured and guided, and honestly, I was very proud that we stepped up last year with the $30,000. I'd like to see that again, since it is too late to talk to the school about it. But maybe going forward into the next budget season, I would like to see that conversation, as well as the rec center allocation of time being given back to us. I'd really like to explore having a rec center conversation, a workshop. That's another conversation this body has not had the chance to have yet. And so it's really hard to move forward on a project that we don't know as a body what we want that to look like. And I know we all probably have very different ideas on what we would like to see. So I want to hopefully agendize some kind of a discussion, either on the dais or as a workshop, where we can kind of get some staff recommendations. I'd love to see a staff assessment of the facility, and talk about the concerns that were brought up by the community. Let's see where we are really at in those numbers, because we can guess all day, but it comes down to money, right? We don't really know how much that would cost, and some of it we probably need to tackle before we consider some others. So we can have that conversation in a better dialogue, I think, if we can agendize that in some way. That being said, because of the community development director, and also another thing I'd like to push off for either mid-year or next year is all of the vehicles on the budget, including the fire truck. And it's not to say we don't want to give you a fire truck, but I have been bringing ideas to electrify and do a similar project to the Helix Water Project that was 90% grant funded on their fleet. And I hate to spend so much money. I mean, we're talking like $2 million, I think, on vehicles here, including the over 200 million, probably including the fire truck, when we should be thinking big picture. And I think that's another conversation I'd like to have before we spend the money on it. Not to say not to spend the money on those things, but I want to have a better conversation about big picture. So that being said, with those things that I like to push off or discuss at a later time or look for other funding avenues, it really says to me that the rec center and the senior center should be top and foremost of the priorities, since it is the community's push. It's been a push for a long time. I don't think it would take too much to really do it in comparison to $2 million in cars. and $250,000 in a staff member, we're not even sure what they're gonna do. So those are my recommendations at this time, and I'll leave any other questions I have for the end. Thank you.
So one of the things that I would like to do is push off adopting a resolution regarding attachment C, approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 salary plan and classification summary, to address some of the issues that both Councilmember Mendoza and Mayor Pro Tem Heredia have highlighted. Namely that there's some issues there where we need more clarity. So before we got even the first round of budget, we had requested analysis of what it would look like if instead of a 3% increase, a 4%, 5%, and 6% for non-management level staff. We have a lot of catching up to do. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. Now I can see. We have a lot of catching up to do. For the people that have spent their lives building this city, who have foregone cost of living increases for years, we have a lot of ground to make up. And so if we are able to start making up some of that ground at this time, it's gonna be really important. Unfortunately, at this time, we still do not have that data and analysis at that staff level in order to be able to make a decision. And so I need that information before I'm willing to commit to only a 3% increase for our folks. Also, we have, in this budget, there are dramatic increases for some of the management level, some more than $45,000 in increased costs for just the city manager alone. And I don't want to approve $45,000 for just one person when $45,000 would mean a 4% increase for the rest of our staff. So I wanna make sure that I have that information before me and I can make an informed decision based on the salary that we're gonna allocate to that staff. Another suggestion I have, and this is because we have had a recent change in our staffing. So our senior management analyst has left, one of them, there are two allocated, so one of them has left. And the salary range for that is between $80,346 and $130,890. For an assistant city manager, it would be between $127,000 and around $207,000. One of the things that became painfully aware when we lost our city manager at the end of last year is that there is no number two here. There is nobody to pick up the slack. There's nobody. She didn't go on a vacation for over 4 years because she couldn't go on a vacation because there was no one who could do what she did. And the city was so heavily reliant on her. That is not fair to a city manager, and it's not fair to the city because when she left, there was a vacancy, and luckily we had Izzy, our public works director, stepped up into the position, but there was a lot of things, from everything from risk management issues to where we were on housing and homelessness, that nobody else had their finger on the pulse of that except for our former city manager. And so I would like to take this opportunity when we have, and the assistant city manager is a position that we already have. There's already a job description in the place for it. We just haven't filled that position for a while. So I would like to look at what it would be to have an assistant city manager rather than fill the position of a senior management analyst. And finally, I also believe that we should discuss the community development director position. Now, that position, just for a little background and history, we've had a number of businesses come to us extremely frustrated with how long it takes to get a permit. And there's a problem in the permitting process, and the former city manager had identified a community services director position that might help facilitate and move permits forward faster, because some of the expertise that's needed would be at that kind of director level position that requires some more building experience than it does just planning experience. And that was based on her recommendation. So originally this was a staff-led note on where our former city manager had perceived where some of the problems lay in getting permits processed faster. I routinely get people who, we have empty storefronts, but there are people trying to open up their businesses and they can't because of the permitting process and how long it takes. And so I can number at least a couple, almost a dozen places where we have somebody who want to open up their doors and they can't because of permitting at this time. So that's the reason why I was supportive of the community service development director, but I hear my fellow council members' concerns and the need for discussion on this item. And so for those reasons, I would like to postpone looking at particularly the salary plan and classification summary and push that to another meeting where we can get more clarity on those issues. Next, I would like to address the rec center. I heard a lot from the community about the rec center from a broad base of people over the course of this last week. I went and did a tour with Mark Horton and Brianna Beers of the rec center. Nothing short of just pure embarrassment. I have never been into the boys' bathroom, and I went in there, and it's a war zone in there. It looks terrible. In addition to the fact that 2 of the urinals are blocked off, and I'm not even sure that they're not operational, they're just blocked off, but they're with there's tarps, there's like road construction type of things in there to prevent the kids from going over there. If too many people flush the toilet, the sewage comes up in the girls' bathroom, from the boys' bathroom. It's just supremely, and there's no hot water. So I've forwarded a list of some of the repairs that are needed. So we definitely need to start with the bathrooms, and there's $50,000 allocated for that. I don't think $50,000 is enough. It needs a complete revamp of what is happening in there. The gym exit double doors, which we've already highlighted, are not safe. They are currently padlocked and chained. If there's a fire emergency, it would be disastrous. We need door stoppers on every door. The door stoppers don't work, and you have to it's a whole system that you have to do it. The gym walls are dirty. A lot of them haven't been painted since 1984 when the building was originally built. There are torn wall protection pads, so when you're playing basketball and you go for a layup and you still have momentum coming behind you, you need a soft pad instead of a hard wall to hit your head on. We also need new foam protection around the 2 glass backboards. Right now the foam protections come off and there's exposed bolts, so if you get some of our kids are pretty tall and can actually dunk, and if they dunk the wrong way, they'll hurt themselves. The bleachers are, I think, the original bleachers and are very difficult to pull in and out. New electronic bleachers that move more easily without the back strength that's needed to do the current level would be nice. Right now, the basketball court lines don't allow you to do the side courts, and so you have to take tape and separately tape off the side courts in order to be able to use the side basketball hoops. For aesthetic purposes, it would be lovely to brand and put our logo in the center of the basketball court, and Canto and other rec centers have that. Also, the offices and the side rooms desperately need loving care. Floor and repair and replacement for the office and side rooms. The sound system hasn't been operational for more than a decade, and we need to replace the stolen sound equipment. The landscaping, we have invasive bamboo right outside, and the wind comes through there. It's like a wind tunnel, and all those leaves make it all the way back to the back end of the gym. They're a nuisance, and we could put native, beautiful plants in there instead. We need new volleyball equipment. The poles and pads are decades old. Organizational storage system, cabinets, and a new layout for optimal use. And so these are just some of the suggestions. One of the problems is that up at the top of the gym, there's a series of windows that let light in, and each one has a screen. But when the screens is busted, and then an owl got in there, and they couldn't even have community events, and the kids couldn't go play in there because there was an owl in there, and then the owl eventually died. So these things have been going on for a long time, and it's a lot of deferred maintenance, and we can't even get the kids in there until we make it safe for them to be in there. We already are running day camps and everything else, and we owe it to our children to have a safe place for them to play. So I am heavily in support of spending the money that we need to spend in order to get the rec center up to where it needs to be repaired. I would suggest that at minimum we would send the $200,000 that was requested to trying to meet all these repair needs, and then set a goal for ourselves of getting these repairs done within the next 6 months. I think that if we want to have any conversations about bringing more children and more activation into that program, we have to do that. We also need a plan for maintenance of the building. It's dirty, and I don't know who's in charge of cleaning it up. I don't know if it's the school district, I don't know if it's the city of Lemon Grove. I posed this question to our city manager, and we have a joint school board conversation coming up in the near future, and so we'll have more discussions around that. But our kids deserve a clean place, a safe place, a clean place to play. We've got them in there already with the day camps and everything else. We need to make it more affordable. Other issue that's come up is that our day camp used to have lunch and breakfast, and that has been cut. And so it was cut without my knowledge of it. I don't know if other city council members knew that it was being cut, but it was cut. And so I'd like to see funding allocated to the day camp to make sure that our kids have breakfast and lunch and snacks when they go to the day camp. The other questions that I had on this was, we had set aside $250,000 in the ARPA funds, that's the American Recovery Act funds, for eviction diversion assistance. So we have spent a lot of effort into getting people out of homelessness. We did a lot of grant work. We got a pilot program. We've done a lot, but we need to make efforts to keep people housed. And so the city council had set aside $250,000 of the American Recovery Act money to help people stay housed. Unfortunately, that $250,000 has not yet been used. It's just still sitting there. And in this time, it was, instead of calling it eviction diversion money, it was listed for homeless services. And so I want to make sure and make clear that the $250,000, it should be to help keep people in their homes. We have people who are barely making it right now, and they have to choose between having a car to get to work and fixing and making the repairs, or between choosing to pay their rent. And you can't pay your rent unless you go to work. And so it's this terrible cycle that people find themselves in. So I want to make sure that that $250,000 was spent for the reasons that we had originally intended, and that those funds start getting to work for our people in our community. Another, to be discussed in the future, is that the lighting district right now, we are not keeping on track for being able to replace the lighting that goes out. Right now, there's about a $12 assessment, and these are items, special revenue items 11 and 12. We need to revisit that and see whether or not $12 per residence is sufficient to cover the lighting needs that we have in our community, so I'd like to see that come up before us in the future. We also have opiate settlement funds, and there should become about $158,000 in the opiate settlement funds. We have people literally dying in our community from fentanyl, and we haven't used these funds yet. What are we waiting for? People are dying today because of this, and so I want to see plans to use that funding for what it was supposed to be used for. I also wanted to stress to the community that for people who suffered damages from the January 2024 floods, there is a new tranche of funding that has become available for them. It's Recover CA, and if you go to that website, it's first come, first serve on the funding. So make sure that you get out there and start applying for those funds. Next, we also have the 50th anniversary that's coming up. It looks like that we've allocated sufficient funds there to do the anniversary, but I wanted to see I don't know if we're planning a parade. Mr. Wood brought up a parade. I would really like a parade. We're trying to do a Labor Day parade. Some of the groups in town, we got a parade committee together for Labor Day parade. But that would be good, and I don't know if there's funding allocated for that. I've done some research, it's about $40,000 to be able to put on a parade, and we can do that with sponsors and whatnot, but I'd like to make sure that that's something that's in the works. And that's what I'll talk about for now. I will go back to Councilmember Smith and see if you have additional comments and questions.
Alright, just trying to get some clarification. Just start at the Sage project. It's from my professional background, from my experience. The design phases, you go schematic design, you go design development, construction documents, and then you do construction administration. Sage project does schematic design, and then schematic design then goes to the professional who does the design development, brings it to construction documents, and it costs, so it just makes the schematic design cost a whole lot less, is basically what it does. As far as Measure D and not having all of it allocated, that doesn't bother me. As far as like if we have funds available, then when we get grants, we need to have matching funds to execute on these grants. Then we have a place where we can get the matching funds. If we have another capital improvement project, there's a pool of money for that. Then, or if potentially we wanted the downtown specific plan to reach out and like if it doesn't quite, if we wanted to cover a little bit more area, like there's something that we can use the funds for. So I don't know that we necessarily need to use all of it right now. When we go to the last council meeting, when we talked about the planning director position, was my understanding that we kind of came to the consensus that we're gonna leave the money in the budget for staff, and just like we will talk about who the staff is. And I understand that when we go through we have our workshop and we have council vote on priorities and we have residents vote on priorities. The reason that staff doesn't get voted highly with residents is because it's the engine of the car. Like, it's not sexy, it's not streets, it's not sidewalks, but it's the thing that makes the city run. And if we continue to strangle staff, we are gonna continue to struggle. So I don't want to ignore staff as we allocate funds. Being on the planning commission for 8 years, and what we kept running into with, we had a ton of things we wanted to do. As far as ordinances and lighting and landscape and et cetera, we didn't have the staff time. So we couldn't do those things because we didn't have the staff bodies in the planning department. And I understand that our director description has been there a while. I mean, I interned with the community development department when I was in college. Carol Dick was the director when I interned. So like, I remember us having a director at one point. To say that the community development manager or community development director is just somebody who points a finger and says staff will do this is inaccurate. Like, they work just as hard as the rest of staff does, and they have a ton of things to do. And so I would be in support of the community development director, but I also support, let's have the discussion. Let's figure out where it is appropriate to bring staff on, what's gonna be most effective, because we really haven't had that full discussion yet. But wanted to put out there, it was something that originated with staff a long time ago, but before our most recent workshop. So it is something that's been needed, attention that we need to pay to, but we have a lot of needs, and so it is worth discussing. I believe that is all the rest I have to say.
Councilmember Alvarado?
I also would like to comment that the community development director, at the time we voted for it, I thought we were voting for a community director. I am looking for someone that can enforce our current ordinances, somebody that can help clean up our streets, enforce parking, RV. The reason why we're not getting a lot of revenue with the dog licenses is because there's no one to enforce them. and my understanding is that there's a maximum of 2 dogs per household, but nobody enforces that. You know, some of us have 3 or 4 dogs, and that's okay, but why have all these ordinances that we have no one to enforce? And so I'm interested in, like Councilmember Smith said, keeping or allocating those funds there and then exploring the type of staff that we need, whether it's an assistant city manager, whether it's a community development director, or just a community director. I think it's important that we recognize where there's needs, especially at City Hall, if we want to make sure that businesses come in here and their business license gets processed in a timely manner. I think that is like one of the most important things to economic development. People are not gonna come here if they know we take a year to process anything. So I would definitely be in support of that. In regards to the fire trucks and electrifying our vehicle, our fleet, I would also be in support of that. So I would wanna wait on purchasing anything before we explore electrifying our fleets. I feel that that is the way to go, that is where the future is in electric vehicles. I understand the fire truck is probably too large to be an electric vehicle, but let's explore that. I'm not sure if there is. I understand, I was in the trucking business and 80,000 pound trucks are now electrified. The diesel trucks are going away, so that may be a thing. So I would like to wait on that. And I'm also in favor of allocating funds for the recreation center. Maybe studying how much it would take to fix all those repairs. And I would like to refer back to a comment that Mayor Snow had made back in the day in regards to naming the recreation center. I am in total favor that after those repairs have been done, that we have a beautiful celebration in naming that recreation center after Councilmember Faya's name. He was all about the rec center. And so I definitely would like to honor him in that way. And lastly, I would also like to request that we vote for the repair of this room. The ladies' bathroom, the door does not close. And it's really hard to use the restroom and hold it at the same time. I think that this room can use a little repair. I'm just being serious. It really is hard, and you know, that shouldn't happen. And that, those are all my recommendations for now. Thank you.
And previously I forgot to mention code enforcement is, this is something else I've been advocating for. We only have one code enforcement officer, although we do have, I see we have a position for code enforcement / water quality engineer. That's not filled, okay. Right, so, we could use another code enforcement, person, definitely. And I like the mayor's idea of, instead of replacing the senior management analyst, let's look into how much more it would be for an assistant city manager. That makes more sense for the reasons that you stated. And then as far as the vehicles, I think we need to get on the fire engine right away. There's only, I think now, like one company that we can get a fire engine from in all of the United States. So it's not like we can shop around for this thing. And the sooner, you know, just in the few years where we purchased the previous engine for I think it was 650,000, and that was like with nothing on it. What are we looking at now? Over $1 million for a fire engine, and it's just going to go up and up because the demand is exceeding the supply. As far as the other vehicles, yes, let's definitely get, let's keep it in the budget, but let's get some prices on, is it feasible to get, electric vehicles? I wanna make that if we make that a priority, and I definitely wanna do that. And that's it.
I did wanna go back to, Councilmember Smith and him wanting to earmark 100,000 for the rec center improvements. I do wanna put on the record some kind of money allocation toward the rec center tonight. I think it's very important that we do that. 100,000 seems like a fair start. It sounds like 200,000 is probably more practical. I don't really know until we have a full assessment of the facility. But I would like to say, that we should, commit to earmarking and funding that, because I noticed last year when we did this, if we didn't put money to it, it never got done. And so it's today or not. So I would like to, when we're approving these resolutions in here, is the feedback of 3 enough to make that happen, or do I have to? Whoever makes a motion says, I wanna add the rec center? Okay. I'd like to make the motion that we add the rec center, but I'll let you finish your talk.
When it comes up there.
So, I wanna go through the Measure T recommendations. So I really like and agree with, Councilmember Mendoza and Mayor Pro Tem Heredia. I think that we should look forward to the future. I think we can leave the funding requests in there because like we said, if there's no money there, then it just doesn't happen. But that with the understanding that they may have to come back more because electric vehicles are sometimes more expensive. But to set that and make it a priority to look at electronic vehicles. For the Measure T Committee's recommendation, for the sidewalks, that one I would like to see go back up to the $250,000 that was recommended by staff. This is money where we do control this area, and I think we can get the work done there. So I'd like to see that go back up to $250,000. For the number 3 item regarding the city facilities deferred maintenance projects, I agree with the recommendation there. For number 4, for the fire inspection vehicle, again, let's explore electric options, but go ahead and approve the $50,000 that's there now. Approve the recommendation that for the fire truck vehicle replacement of $500,000, so it's 3 payments of $500,000. And again, explore an electric option. Accept the number 6 recommendation for the SAGE project. Then I'd also like to include money sufficient to cover the lunch and breakfast program for our day camps.
I think that was funded by the school district. That wasn't funded by the city.
Right, that's why the school district is no longer funding it, and our kids are no longer getting lunch and breakfast as part of that program. So let me finish my thing, and then I'll let you go through it. So I'd like to see money for that, and I'm hoping that he's telling me that they're already on it. But and then I would like to see $200,000 for the repairs to the rec center. So in addition to the $50,000 that was already allocated for the bathrooms, I'd like to see an additional $200,000 to really get. I think the bathrooms are going to cost significantly more than $50,000 to be operational. Like the whole plumbing system looks like, and the sewer lines look like they need to be redone. And so I think those are expensive items. And to go through that list of repairs that were needed, just from my walkthrough, I think it's gonna take that much. So those are my items on the Measure T recommendations. And then at this point, I'll let staff address.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so I wanted to mention first about the lunches for the summer camp program. We talked to the school district and just found out today that they're going to continue to provide free lunches for the kids. So I don't think we need to allocate additional funding for that, which is good news. Yes, they were, yeah, so good news there. Let's see.
couple other comments that were made. So question about ARPA and the $250,000 that we have still available. So two things. One, we do have the 250 still on balance. However, we do have a spending deadline by December, and so we're going to be recommending allocating that 250 of ARPA funds towards the streets program in order to spend it down before December. However, we also have an additional 200 and change in interest earnings from ARPA that we also have on balance, which doesn't have the same spending requirement. And so we could still utilize that funding for the homeless diversion program. Also a question about the lighting districts. We have budgeted within the current budget a study to look at both of those lighting districts and determine what the proper funding levels would be if we wanted to add additional lighting throughout the community in different areas. So that is part of the budget that we'll be taking a look at. Did want some clarification would be helpful in terms of the positions that were discussed. There were a few different opinions from council. Sounds like we want to put off the community development director position, at least put a pause in that, and possibly put a pause in any of the positions that were discussed, including and then taking a closer look at whether or not we would support a community development director or an addition of a code enforcement officer. So that was kind of one of the two trade-offs. Right, and there was also a mention of an assistant city manager. However, there are only two folks in support of that, and so I would like just some clarification there. We are in the process of hiring for the senior management analyst position, and so I would like an answer on that so that we can make a determination of the direction we go for that position. Okay. And then for vehicles, I heard preference from council that we explore potentially looking at electric vehicles as a whole. I think that's appropriate for some vehicles, however, it's not for others, obviously for certain reasons in terms of the way that they're utilized in service. And so I guess I would just like a clarification if it's possible for staff to look at each vehicle based on the need and then make a determination if it's possible to purchase either an electric vehicle or the other alternative is possibly purchasing a hybrid as well. However, if we were to go down that route, there's additional considerations that we need to take into consideration in terms of the supporting charging infrastructure that we would need in order to put those vehicles into service. So we haven't taken a look at that, but we of course can do that. So I think that what we would like to see is a direction from council if we could move forward with those purchases, make that analysis and the determination on a case-by-case basis for each vehicle, and if it is appropriate, then move forward with an electric vehicle contingent on the fact that there's appropriate funding or charging infrastructure available for that department to do that. Thank you. Yes, so correct. We have $50,000 that the city is contributing currently, and then we have an additional $100,000 that the school district is contributing.
Is that in addition to the 100,000 we already allocated?
Yes, yes. So I think that that's sufficient in order to get the restrooms complete, and then there will be the additional either $100,000 or $200,000 for the additional upgrades to the facility.
So regarding the postponing adopting the salary plan and classification summary, so at this time, I would recommend pushing that off so we can get questions answered about the assistant city manager position, getting rid of the senior management analyst position, the analysis on the 4, 5, and 6% increases for staff, what the community development director would be, and more clarification on the job description there, and also the analysis on collections, code enforcement, thank you. Code enforcement, and looking at those different positions. So I don't feel like I'm ready to vote on that. I don't have enough information to do that. And I had let our city manager know before that meeting that those were informational items that I would need to be able to vote tonight on those issues. Regarding the Measure T recommendations, I've already gone through those. I have gone through the budget. So the budget has a line item that says homeless services, $250,000. The explanation that was just provided by the city manager is something completely different than what's in the current budget. So can you explain why your proposal isn't in this budget and why there's a line item for $250,000 on homeless services, and where is the $200,000 in interest payments in this budget? And I also just wanted to say I've asked for page numbers, and so not having page numbers makes it really difficult to follow along. So please add page numbers into this. If you can address the homeless services issue, thank you.
Yeah, and can you clarify what you're looking for, because essentially we'd be using the interest earnings to fund that program, and so the 250 that's listed within the budget is indeed the ARPA funding that exists. However, we haven't reprogrammed it yet, and so I'm sharing that with the council because it's new information that we just learned this week.
So this is the page that I'm referring to. It's called American Rescue Plan ARPA Fund 28. So that's a special revenue fund that we had called Fund 28. On that fund, it lists for 26-27 homeless services in the amount of $250,000. So that is why I'm saying in the current budget, there's $250,000 that is allocated for this next year for homeless services. That was meant to be for eviction diversion assistance. The problem is that never was implemented. So it's been sitting there, even since January, there's not been a lot of movement on it. We had already had preliminary talks with Jewish Family Services to be able to help us distribute this money and make sure Lemon Grovers who are suffering and trying to make their rent payments, get their rent payments done. The additional money that's coming in from the extra $200,000 he's talking about isn't in this budget. So I don't know why it's not in the budget. When I approve something in a budget, that's what I'm approving. I'm not approving that the homeless services is gonna be supplemented. That's something we vote on. We don't have the city staff tell us that that's what they're gonna do with the money instead. And so right now, what we're approving is homeless services for $250,000. So that's where my question lies, and that's what I'm referring to.
Well, I'm kind of new here, but ARPA, we had to prepare a plan to where the money was going to be spent, and right now it's at homeless services. So I do believe we have to do some work to switch it over to a streets, and at this point we haven't been able to work on that yet. But the 250
But you have to get, I just wanna make clear that you have to get approval from us in order to be able to make that kind of change. I would rather that the interest be applied to this and we spend down this money. This is something that's been on the books now for over 2 years, and we still haven't got this money out to our people. And so I haven't approved this, and this is the budget that's currently set, and so I just am trying to get clarity on why city staff feels it's okay to tell us how we're gonna spend the money instead of coming and asking us if that's what we want to do.
I believe the 250 is budgeted for homeless services. The question is whether we can spend it by December 31st, because it's been there for several years and haven't made progress. If we don't spend it by December 31st, it goes away. So I think what we were saying, why don't we can come back to you, or we can do it here, spend it on streets right now to be able to hit the December 31st deadline. And then we have earned over $200,000 in interest over the years that the city gets to keep. And there is no spending deadline. And then maybe we can put that and work with that on homeless services. But right now we're up against a deadline on December 31st. The 250 is not spent, you'll lose it.
Yeah, that's correct, and we would return to council with a contract for the homeless diversion services program, whoever we would award that to at that time, so we get approval for that expenditure. But I would definitely wanted to give council a heads up regarding that new information as part of the budget discussion tonight.
Unfortunately, if I hadn't brought this issue up, it wouldn't have been part of the discussion tonight. And I just, it's a frustration that we feel with the rec center. It's a frustration that we feel with different programs, is that we set expectations for what we want to accomplish, and unfortunately, it just doesn't get done. And so one of these things is we have the eviction diversion money. People are suffering. They suffered through COVID. They're still trying to hold on to their houses, and we haven't got this money out to the people. So again, it's one of those items that as a council member and like a participant on this board, is that I find embarrassing. Like, this was hope for families, and we haven't been able to deliver. So I really wanna stress that when we make these recommendations and when we set these things, especially as we're getting into the rec center, I want timelines and when we're gonna accomplish what, because it's not getting done, and unfortunately, families are suffering as a result of that. And so we owe it to ourselves to set firm deadlines on when we're gonna accomplish these things. If we sat on this money, this is American Recovery Act funds. These are COVID funds that we have not spent in a timely manner. We set them aside, we met the deadlines for that, and we didn't spend the money. So I find this extremely frustrating, part of the process. So I'll ask, is there anything else in the budget where this is an issue? Where there's, where is the reflection of the 200,000? It's not in here anywhere.
It's in fund balance. It's just, we know it's in fund balance. You have an ending fund balance of 400,000 after all this revenue. So that's our interest.
Fund balance on what page?
On
Like,
that same page.
Okay.
So we weren't recommending to do anything with it right now. We just, and it's probably not my place, but again, we're talking to people that have just come into the city, and we are trying our best to figure out where money should go and where it should be without a whole lot of history. So, this is, the 250 has been there, I agree. But we haven't been part of trying.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to walk me through it, cause I don't see a $200,000 entry here, so I see.
No, there's no entry. It's just that when you, we are anticipating that by the end of the year, if you did spend the 250, that you would still have 400, the fund balance at the bottom, on the far right, at the bottom, the 421,000 on the fund 28. On the far right, at bottom, there's a ending fund balance of 421,000 in ARPA.
So it says interest earnings, and where it says interest earnings, there's
10, yeah.
nothing.
You-
Interest earnings has nothing on that row.
It has 10,000. No, it's, so we're gonna carry over 600, it's carryover money. So we've never spent the interest earning over all these years. We've had ARPA funds sitting in the bank and not spent, they've been earning interest. So it's just been accumulating in your fund balance. So it's not, it's been over the many years that you've had ARPA, we've been earning interest earnings. So,
If there's a $200,000 in 24-25.
correct. You've never spent that.
So
It
that's
just has
still
accumulated.
So what you're saying is that is still there.
It's slowly accumulated, and so by the end of 27, the leftover fund balance is 421,000.
And that includes this
It's-
$200,000.
It includes all the interest earnings you've been earning over the years since 2020, 2021, when you had got the ARPA funds. So we've been accumulating interest, but we've never come back to ask to spend that money. So it's just sitting there, we're saying that's going to be available, but we haven't had time to, figure out what to recommend for you to spend it on. But we do know that we will be losing that 250 by December 31st, and I apologize that it hasn't happened, but, we don't know that we can make that happen by December 31st of this year. So,
I just, if I approve this budget the way it is right now, you have spend money on homeless services.
Correct.
Uh,
But no, yeah, and we still have to go back and manage the ARPA funds and explain a different place to spend it. But we would have a better shot of doing that if it was in the streets.
Yes, our next step is to then go to the federal government. We have to make a request in terms of changing the allocation of those funds. And then once we get their approval, then we would go out to RFP for the homeless diversion services.
Yeah, I'm not a specialist in this, so I understood that when we had dedicated those, we had a certain time frame for allocating the monies. And so there may be a chance that the federal government doesn't even approve that because now we're trying to change that allocation and we had already barely before the end of that deadline had allocated the money. So there was a time cutoff for when we could allocate the money and a time for us to spend it down. And so we're blowing both deadlines. And so again, and this has been a consistent priority for our community. Then other things I want us to take a look at mid-year is also whether or not we can give another infusion of gift card money. My understanding is that at this point we haven't spent it all down yet, and so that's why we haven't allocated anything additional. But that's something that I do want to put a pin in and take a look at. All right, so I would like to make a motion. Our city clerk very helpfully helped me lay this out, the scripts. Okay, so I would like to move to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 City of Lemon Grove operating and capital budget. Do I have a second?
I think we were done giving our feedback. Actually, you were the only one that did after he asked from us. So I'm gonna continue on with that real quick.
So there's a motion,
I know, but we've gotta give our feedback still, and I think that's more appropriate to finish that. Because he'd asked for clarification, to be fair. And so, that being said, I wanna go back to those items.
Can I interject?
Yes, please.
There is a motion on the floor, and so unless the motion is withdrawn, then we're looking for a second, and then you can discuss it after a second is made. If you don't wanna make a second, that's okay, it fails.
is there a second?
I just think we should have had discussion. We weren't supposed to move forward is all I'm getting at.
I'm not.
If anybody would like to make a
disputing
second,
you,
go
I'm just
ahead.
Procedurally,
Well, just procedurally, I'll second the motion, and then now we can have discussion.
yes.
Okay.
Thank
So, going back to the questions, with the electrifying of the vehicles, I do believe that the dump truck is probably off of the, ability to be electrified. I feel like that was one of the ones I talked to, Mr. Mira, I can't do it. About that, and that was because of I don't know that that's a feasible ask to electrify that. And so I would like to reiterate that it wasn't just to electrify the vehicles, but to also look for the grant funding possibility for the infrastructure and the vehicles, like Helix Water did. And we can very easily go talk to their people and get that whole system done. It was a bunch of agencies that partnered together. It was really cool. So I'd like to see us do that in the bigger picture. So it's not just the trucks, but also that infrastructure in that grant program. I would be willing to add the 200,000 in for the rec center facilities. I love the idea of switching the ARPA funds to the streets so that we don't lose it, and then using the 200K for homeless services and however we decide to use that homeless services funding. Because I don't know that we really got to the discussion that it was really gonna be used for tenant protection totally. I mean, it was a theory, but it wasn't ever put into play. And I do not blame any of the current staff for that because we have gone through quite a change. But I do appreciate the alternative offer. And I can see why the value of that is. I know that I knew, because of being a journalist for a while here, those ARPA funds, once they're gone, you lose them and that's a bummer to lose any funding you can get, so I'd love to see that. As far as the staffing was concerned, I'd like to push off the staffing part, as the mayor had suggested. My question though on that is the salary plan for the COLA allocation of 3%. I don't wanna keep staff from getting their raise on time, so I'm not really interested in pushing that back if that's a problem.
Yes, I think that we can have a more wide-ranging conversation about staffing positions and still adopt the classification schedule tonight, because indeed it does have the increases in there, and that does need to be in place by the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. So we would very much appreciate the adoption of the document, and then we could have that wider-ranging conversation.
I'll just say that, on the 4, 5, and 6% salary plan, all of this, like, the goal is to get all of this passed before the July 1st deadline, so they wouldn't miss it out. Like, I'm hoping that all of this will come back before us, before the budget goes into effect.
Trying to see what else you had asked us for clarification. Can you think of anything I didn't clarify that you had asked, Mr. Winnie?
Can I clarify that
Yes.
the 200,000 is in addition to the 50,000 that's already allocated?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I did say let's push the positions back, like let's get more discussion involved in that. I am willing to approve the Measure T plan, other than the vehicles. I just want more discussion about that pushed out, so I think we can allocate the funds toward it, but let's discuss it further, I think is how you mentioned it could be done. And yeah, unless I didn't touch something that you asked, I'll pass it on.
So, one of the things that was an additional suggestion was to keep the 200,000 from the original staff report for Berry Street repairs, and so just to get clarification on that one too, I'll give it back to the mayor pro tem.
I was gonna give it to the next person. Oh, I have one more thing, sorry, one more thing, I forgot, the mayor brought it up at the end. I am not in support of adding anything to the gifting because we aren't getting the support of the community buying into it, so it doesn't make sense to put more money into a program that's not working. Thank you.
And so talking about the gift money, there's still over $100,000 in it, in that fund, and it's been about a year, so yeah, I'll pass on that, so it's gonna be a no for me. I will say yes to the COLA increases, and just wait for the classification and wage study to come back and just make a more informed, educated, comprehensive decision on that. And I would like to keep the allocation for hiring additional staff, however, have a further discussion on it so that we can make sure we know what we're getting with that. And again, the same comments on the trucks, looking at what is out there that we can electrify and then what we can purchase that isn't electric. Maybe coming back with what is feasible and what isn't. And I'm okay with allocating the 200,000 for the rec center on top of the already 50,000. And that's it.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, the way the EV vehicles was put, like, leave the allocations and just look into, having them be electric vehicles with the infrastructure to go with it. The additional 200,000 for the rec center improvements to be earmarked, I can support. To leave the funding allocation for a staff position in the budget and then discuss what that staff position is, I can support. I can support the 200K for the Berry Street sidewalk. I think we can get that done. The YIFI program, I have to agree, we have a lot of money in there right now, it doesn't need an infusion at this moment. I think we could do some work on advertising it, because it is an effective program if we can get people to use it. And then when the money is being depleted, then we can look at filling it back again. And for the COLA increases, if the salary plan classification summary is approved, the whatever additional can still happen, can't it? So we,
That's correct.
yeah, so I don't have a problem with approving it either.
Clerk, can you call the vote on the first, motion to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 City of Lemon Grove operating and capital budget, but after clarification from the city attorney?
Thanks, I just wanna clarify that additional 200,000 that we seem to have consensus on for the rec center, does that have to be added to the operating and capital budget?
It's measured specifically.
Okay, then I would ask you to amend your motion to include that $200,000 allocation. Other than that, I think everything is generally the same, except you give direction to staff. So I don't think there are any increases or decreases.
Yeah, I think, oh, very soon, yeah, so make those two amendments.
So I'm going to amend the motion to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 City of Lemon Grove operating and capital budget with an additional $200,000 to be allocated for repairs for the Lemon Grove Rec Center, and an additional $200,000 to be allocated on top of the $50,000 that was already approved by the Measure T committee to go towards the repairs at Berry Street Park. Is there a second?
I'll continue to second.
And we'll ask the city clerk to call the roll.
The motion was made by Mayor Snow with a second by Councilmember Mendoza to approve the fiscal year 2026-27 City of Lemon Grove operating and capital budget with an additional $200,000 to be allocated for repairs at the Lemon Grove Recreation Center, and an additional $200,000 to be allocated on top of the $50,000 that was already approved by the Measure T committee to go towards the repairs of the Berry Street Park. I will now conduct the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Mendoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meridia?
Aye.
Mayor Snow?
Aye.
The motion carries on a vote of 5-0.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 appropriations limit. Second,
I'll second.
and Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
The motion was made by Mayor Snow with a second by Councilmember Mendoza to approve a resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-27 appropriations limit. I'm not gonna let the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Mendoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meridia?
Aye.
Mayor Snow?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
The city council now will act in its capacity as the Lemon Grove Roadway Lighting District Board of Directors. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year, I move to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 Lemon Grove Roadway Lighting District budget. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion was made by Chair Snow with a second by Vice Chair Heredia. I'll now conduct the roll to go on the record. And that is to approve the fiscal year 2026-27 Lemon Grove Roadway Lighting District budget. Councilmember Mendoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Vice Chair Heredia?
Aye.
Chair Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries on a vote of 5-0.
The city council will now act in its capacity as the Lemon Grove Sanitation District Board of Directors. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution approving I move to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 Lemon Grove Sanitation District budget.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Chair Snow with a second by Board Member Altamirano to approve the fiscal year 2026-27 Lemon Grove Sanitation District budget. I'll now conduct the roll to call on the record. Board Member Altamirano.
Aye.
Board Member Smith.
Aye.
Board Member Mendoza.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heredia.
Aye.
Chair Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries on a vote of 5-0. I believe, we are missing the second bulletin point there.
So I would, move to postpone adoption of a resolution approving fiscal year 2026-2027 salary plan and classification summary, until the second regularly scheduled meeting in June. Is there a second for that?
I think this is where I add a substitute motion and approve the COLA, at least. I'd like to add that as a substitute motion.
That was the motion.
All right, substitute motions are heard first. The motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Heredia with a second by Councilmember Altamirano. I will now conduct the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Altamirano.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heredia.
Aye.
Mayor Snow.
No.
The motion carries on a vote of 4-1.
I move to, have the rest of the resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 salary plan and classification with the exemption of the COLA increase, which is the cost of living increase, postponed to the second meeting in June, or, if another meeting is needed, to add a meeting for that. Is there a second for that?
Yeah.
And,
All right, the motion was made by, Mayor Snow, with a second by, Councilmember Mendoza. I'll now conduct the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Mendoza.
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano.
No.
Councilmember Smith.
We just approved the COLA, does that work as far as a motion?
There's more to that fund than just a COLA increase.
Yes.
And the motion that was made by Councilmember Heredia, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Heredia, just addresses the COLA increase. And so the mayor's motion addresses the remainder of what's in that proposed budget.
Oh, can you just approve the rest of it as a motion?
Can you confirm this is for the next meeting or sooner or before July 1st, right?
The mayor's motion was to continue it to the next meeting in June, I believe.
Except the COLA. Or
COLA has been approved,
Yeah, making sure.
but all the rest of the stuff inside of that budget, she's proposing should be moved to the second meeting in June.
Thank you for
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can do that, that's okay. So, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heredia.
Aye.
Mayor Snow.
aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, I believe.
Do you have something to add?
If I'm not mistaken, the only thing at this point that's in the salary that you would change here is the COLA. It's the only thing we have in here is the COLA increase.
And the community development director.
And, well, we have the position in there, it doesn't mean we
Correct.
have to fill. There is a position of the community development listed, doesn't mean you have to fill it. Is that what you wanna come back and discuss? I just wanna make sure I understand what we're gonna come back and
That's why
discuss.
you
looked like you had questions, it's important.
Because we only have the 3% in here, that's the only change, and we do have the community development position in here.
Right, and then we also wanted to look at, removing the senior management analyst position and
So you
what
wanna
the
look at all
cost.
the different positions.
Right.
By next week, and just to have that discussion
2 weeks
next
from
week.
now.
2 weeks, I mean, you guys wanna have that discussion.
Right. Right. And I would still like to have the analysis of the staff level for 4%, 5%, and 6% at the current staffing levels. Just for educational purposes, not that we'll address it at that meeting, or we won't make any decisions about it, but it's not the staff, it includes management. So so I just want, just to be clear, so we have different tiers, and so management level, I want that separated out so I can see just what rank and file staff members, how would that increase would be. Alright. Now we'll go back to item number 2. Before we get to item number 2, just a quick break. So we'll take a quick, 3 to 5 minute break, and then we'll come back up.
Well, you know I'll be here for, I'll be here.
knew I had to say that about.
So we just do every year.
All right, we will start to go back onto the record. We're going to move on to item number 2. This is the annual sanitation district rate analysis. I'll call on our public works director, Izzy Murguia, to present the report.
Good evening, Chair and members of the District Board. This evening is the annual Lemon Grove Sanitation District rate analysis. Before we delve into the meat and potatoes, just some background. The sanitation district operates a 70-mile sewer system. The district transports its sewage to the City of San Diego Metropolitan Wastewater System. The City of San Diego treats and disposes that waste for the for the Lemon Grove Sanitation District, as well as several other participating agencies. The sanitation district is an enterprise fund, and so it's required to generate revenues from sewer service fees to recover the full cost of ongoing maintenance, capital improvements, replacements, and the district's share of metro facilities. Next slide. Every 5 years, the district adopts a 5-year sewer rate study that recommends approved sewer rates during that time frame. Our most recent 5-year sewer rate study was approved on April 18th, 2023, and identifies sewer rate adjustments through fiscal year 27-28. This study, in essence, is the financial plan of the sanitation district that outlines a revenue adjustment strategy to recover the costs of operating the system. The sewer study outlines 3% increase adjustments through fiscal year 27-28, and our last rate adjustment was approved last year on July 1st. Next slide. It's difficult to see the font here, but this is the 5-year schedule that is outlined in the 5-year sewer rate study, beginning with fiscal year 23-24 with an approved rate of $655.20, going through fiscal year 27-28 at $737.43. Again, if the district board had approved the 3% rate increases as outlined in this 5-year sewer rate study, that's where rates would be at the end of the 5-year rate period. It is important to note that we have a hybrid hybrid structure where residential customers are billed on a equivalent dwelling unit basis. So think of it as a single family home is equal to one equivalent dwelling unit, while our commercial customers are billed on a consumption base. So they get charged in essence 100% of the water that they utilize above and beyond the first 675 cubic feet of water that they utilize in a month. They get charged on top of that. Next slide. So the item before you this evening, the purpose of this is to assess whether a reduction in the approved rates for fiscal year 26-27 is financially feasible compared to the approved or recommended rates identified in the 5-year sewer rate study. The district board has in the past, or I should say it is past practice to come before the board with this item looking at the financials to see whether or not the 3% increase in this case is still adequate, or whether or not the board could adopt anything less than that. And so that discussion, this item is to have that discussion. Additionally, reasons why we have this rate analysis is, year to year, Metro Pure Water Costs program, is progressing, so there's changes in Metro expenses. We're in the process of adopting SARA, changing the billing methodology. The district has ongoing maintenance and capital costs that might differ from when the 5-year sewer study was first adopted, and so all those different variables need to be reconsidered on an annual basis for staff to recommend whether or not that initial 3% is recommended. Next slide. This is an 8-year history of the district's sewer rate adjustment approvals dating back to fiscal year 2018-19. You can see the second column is in essence what the approved 5-year sewer rate study had called for. The third column is what the district board eventually adopted. And then the fourth column is the CPI, just to compare how our recommended rate compares to CPI, Consumer Price Index. And the last column is the actual monthly rate per EDU. And again, right now, our current rate per EDU is $674.86. Next slide. So every year we, as I mentioned, we bring this analysis forward to the district board with the assistance of Dexter Wilson Engineering, which is our district engineer. And with me this evening, I have Natalie Fischetti to help with any questions with this presentation. And so in the analysis, they looked at 6 scenarios, and I'll briefly highlight those. The first analysis looks at 3% increase for fiscal year 26 and 27 through the 20-year analysis, as well as transferring 500,000 from pure water reserve, or utilizing 500,000 from pure water reserve starting last year. Analysis 2, next slide, or next button, there you go, thank you. Assumes an on and off implementation of sewer service charges, again, utilizing or drawing down on the pure water reserve, beginning in fiscal year 25-26. Next analysis. Analysis number 3 assumes a 3% increase in fiscal year 26 and 27 and beyond, meaning through the 20-year study. And then the difference between 1 and 3 is that analysis 3 looks at delaying the use of pure water reserve funds until 2030. Next, analysis number 4 assumes a sewer service charge increase of 1% through fiscal year 27-28, and then thereafter it's 3%. And then it looks at delaying the use of pure water funds until 2030. Analysis number 5 assumes sewer service charges increase of 2% through 27-28 with 3% thereafter, and then looks at delaying the use of pure water reserves until 2030. And then lastly, number 6 is assuming no sewer service charges through 27-28, and there is a 3% increase thereafter, and then drawing down on the pure water reserves starting 25-26. So 6 scenarios for the purposes of the agenda report and the item tonight. We focused on analysis number 1 because that's in line with the 5-year sewer rate study and the practice of utilizing the pure water reserve to offset our pure water costs. And then we focus on analysis 4, 5, and 6. Next slide. So with any study, there are assumptions and built into the financial forecasts. The study or the analysis assumes that sewer connections are at 0.1% per year or 8 EDUs. This is a conservative approach, or just for comparison, our 5-year sewer rate study, I think, looked at 27 EDUs per year. Our district salaries and operating expenses utilizes an inflationary factor of 3.5% per year. Contracted services, 3%, and that is mostly focused on metro costs. And then interest revenue for pure water reserve estimated at 0.85% and utilizing the 3-year life average. And then lastly, our CIP costs utilizing an inflationary cost of 3%. Next slide. So this slide here, these next couple charts, there's going to be a lot of numbers, and I'll in essence try to get to the main point. Again, this is a 20-year outlook, and so a lot of things can change in 20 years, but the point is, how do these percentage increases today affect the district 20 years from now? And so what we're going to look at in these next couple slides is each scenario, 1, the 3%, 1, 2, and 0% adjustments through the 20-year period, but we're going to be looking at, in essence, these 5 data points. Next slide. So for scenario 1, again, this is the 3% proposed increase in fiscal year 26, 27 beyond, funding our capital reserve, and then drawing down pure water reserves, which we're currently doing now to offset our pure water costs. And primarily with this item, adopting the 3%, assuming 3% throughout the 20-year period. At the end of the 20 years, the district, won't see any deficit spending. In essence, that's the take home point that I wanted to deliver with that item. Looking at the reserve balance for Fund 15, that increases a little bit. keep in mind that the dollar value in 2040 it might look like a lot, but it's 20 years from now, so it's inflationary. Next slide. Scenario 2, again, this is analysis number 4. This looks at 1% through fiscal year 27-28, and then 3% thereafter. Looks at funding capital and delaying the use of pure water funds until 2030. And then with this slide in the red, in essence, with a 1% rate increase at the end of the 20-year period, the district would see deficit spending at the end of the 20-year mark at approximately $240,000. Next slide. Scenario 3, again, this analysis looks at 2% rate increases through fiscal year 27-28, and then 3% beyond that. It looks at funding our capital program and then delaying the use of pure water funds until 2030. Under this scenario, there are no deficit spendings throughout the 20-year period. And then again, reserve balances on the operating side, capital, they're all stable, increasing slightly, but again, those dollar numbers may be misconceived, but that's because they're inflationary. And then lastly, scenario number 4, you click on the next slide. This looks at 0% increases. So what does that look like 20 years from now? And obviously, any rate percent increase has a compounding effect. And with the 0% rate increases, I did want to make a note that there's a typo on my slide, but in essence, with 0% rate increases, the district would begin to see deficits in 2039/2040, starting at around $387,000. And that carries through 2045/46. And it slightly increases from $387,940 to $502,000 at the end of the 20-year period, again with 0% increases. Next slide. So this slide here is just a representation of what the EDU yearly rate would look like at 0%, which is our current rate, $674. 1% would look what that rate would be, that's $681.61. 2% is $688.36. 3%, as is called for in the sewer rate study, that's $695.10. Next slide. Okay, this slide here is the next 4 slides are our forecast utilizing the budget that we have, or that the district board adopted moments ago. And so, Joel, I don't know if you can move the slide at all, or in any case, it should be in your packet, but this slide shows the budget at 3%, which is what the district board adopted. And I want to focus your attention to the line item right under total transfer out. It's the ending net position before restricted. In essence, there's a parentheses of $320,000 and 245, a negative amount. And what that shows is that is the net position after we do the transfer outs to capital, to pure water, to our SB1 fund, which is fund streets. And so while our revenues and our while revenues exceed expenditures, when you take into consideration our transfer outs, that's when we start running in the red. So at 3%, what does that look like? That's $320,000. At 2%, next slide. Excuse me. At 3%, then at 2%, it's $395,000. That's where we start drawing down into the fund balance. And then 1%, next slide. We're drawing down $470,000, which happened into fund balance with a 1% rate increase. And then when we look at 0%, next slide. That's when we reach the $500,000 mark, tapping into fund balance. Next slide. All right, a lot of information, a lot of numbers, but in essence, this is a receive and file and provide direction item. However, there is a recommendation from staff to approve a 3% rate increase for fiscal year 26-27. Again, the recommendation is based on keeping the district financially sound for as long as possible and avoiding operating deficiencies. Hence the recommendation at 3%. There are not necessarily unknowns, but there are a lot of upcoming capital costs coming our way, specifically with regards to Metro wastewater billing methodologies and switching from our strength-based system to our functional allocation-based system. And so our costs are going to increase by 12%. This is something that we've briefed the district board when we adopted Sarah. We mentioned those forecasts at that time. Additionally, we have billings for phase 1 pure water that are coming on or have been coming online. We're on year 3 of those costs that the district is seeing. Additionally, there's unknowns. Phase 2, which is the planning phase. Okay, it's planning phase, but those costs will be coming online in or seeing capital costs in 2040 timeframe. And then with regards to other outside factors, CPI at least this year is under 3%. Historically, at least during COVID, we were seeing over 5%. Still kind of unknown with regards to the markets, but in any case, whenever you can, you want to ensure that your rates at least keep up with CPI. And then lastly, our capital improvement program. We are getting many of our delayed projects out the door and beginning the new projects, but for next fiscal year, we have $7.2 million in estimated costs to get those projects done. And so one of the additional reasons for the 3% rate recommendation. Next slide. Next steps, again, this is an annual discussion that the district board has requested staff of. After our discussion, staff essentially would like direction on if there's consideration separately from the 3%, we'd like direction on what that rate is, get confirmation on that so that we can provide direction to our engineer, district engineer, so they can incorporate that rate increase into the engineer's report. And then on June 16th, which is our next meeting, we can finalize our engineer's report that details the sewer service charge rate. And then we can set a public hearing to get those sewer service charges onto the tax roll, and that item would come before the district board on July 7th, along with finalizing the ordinance of that revised rate, whatever that may be. And then lastly, July is utilized to compile all the tax roll and assessment data, so that goes towards adoption, so the district can start collecting the sewer service fees at the end of the year to fund operations. With that, that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions and anything related to Metro and things current. And again, Natalie is here to help with those questions as well. Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this item? There's no public comment on this item, so we'll close that portion of the agenda. And now we'll go to questions from council members. I'll start with Councilmember Smith.
I didn't so much have questions as much as sort of looking through the options we have and saying that I'm okay with either the 3% or the 2% options, either scenario, I believe 1 or 3. 2% doesn't put us in, we have the funds to maintain, so we're not getting in the red there. And it also allows us to give a break to ratepayers when it's a difficult time, but it doesn't threaten the agency. And so I think that's a good compromise. I could also go with the 3% to make sure that we have the money that we need in the future for when Pure Water gets into its phase 2. We want to make sure we don't see a rate spike because that happened. So those are my thoughts.
Councilmember Altamirano?
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Murguia. And just to confirm, none of these calculations take into account the 3 phases for the Pure Water project, right, in the future that are coming up. So right now, they're finishing phase 1. And it also does not include any potential revenue that we'll be getting once that is completed.
That's correct. She can elaborate.
Yes, so it does include phase 1 costs for both capital perspective, which has been secured through debt financing. Also includes operations costs for phase 1 as we know them to be today. The facility is not yet operational, so we do not fully know what those costs will be. The end of this year, they will complete preliminary evaluations on determining the scope and duration of phase 2, but that's looking to be in the 2038, 2040, somewhere in that time frame. They're evaluating what the scope of those projects will be. And that's what's on the planning horizon is phase 2.
With that being said, I'm a numbers girl, so I just want to see, like, in real dollars, how much am I going to spend if I approve one or the other? And it looks like if we go with the number 2% option, it would increase my annual bill by $14 from $674 to $688. And if we go with 3% option, it would increase it by $20.85 per year from $674.86 to $695.10. And at this moment, considering that scenario 1, which is the 3%, the ending fund balance there is the highest at $31 million. And with all the unforeseen costs that may potentially come with the other phases, I think I would feel comfortable with 3% increase, but I'm also okay with the 2% increase. Thank you.
So, just to piggyback, on what, Councilmember Altamirano was saying. So, it says here the billing for phase 1 capital costs have started. So, I'm just curious, what are we being billed for phase 1 capital costs? I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask for some assistance here, but I think this, we were talking about this earlier, but the laboratory, and,
So we can provide you a very detailed breakdown of what has been billed so far. There is the first debt payment, which I believe is roughly about $300,000 for the first, phase one capital portion payment. I don't know, the operating portion, it's rolled in within the overall metro, but I can get you that detail. One of the things that I would like to see happen for you going forward is the vision of the way that you receive metro costs, a breakdown to a specific allocation of what is pure water. It's still unfolding at the metro level, and they are working internally on providing breakdowns for each of the agencies of what is specifically a pure water cost. So it is built into the models, it's in the depths of that, and we're getting information as recently as this week.
Okay, and that's what makes this difficult for me is and all along, is the unknowns, even though the unknowns are slowly becoming knowns now, finally. So our, like Lemon Grove, our portion is gonna be $300,000 for the capital costs? Like our portion of the payment.
I can tell you the number for fiscal year 26-27 is 219,000. 219,000.
Okay, and then will that come out of our capital, the sanitation capital fund?
Correct. Fund 19, which is the pure water reserve, or 17, 17, excuse me. Yeah, our pure water reserve. So what you're seeing, or in the budget, you'll see a transfer in and a transfer out. We're continuing to contribute 500,000 to the pure water reserve, and then transferring back out our pure water costs, actual costs for that year.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's the 219. Oh, that was my next question is, actually, Tony and I talked about that yesterday. The transfer, I was confused about the transfer in and the transfer out. So we're still gonna transfer out 500,000, but then we have to transfer back the 219.
Yeah.
And why? I mean, why not? I don't get it why we're gonna transfer money out of the operating fund and then transfer.
It's in essence just to capture what the costs were that particular year, but another way to look at it is as netting, what is it, $300,000 that's going to the pure water fund reserve, which would be it's just another method of budgeting. But we wanted to capture we wanted to see what those costs were.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, we do too. We want to know what we're gonna be paying for.
And if I could just add a bit to that the transfer of 500,000 into the fund, was established some time ago, prior to really the costs being established for pure water, and prior to the debt financing being secured. So the 500,000 is something that the council decided on previously.
Yeah, it was just because we didn't know.
Right, exactly.
We
And
hadn't
it's,
put it.
right, and it's used as an assumption in this analysis for a basis of uniform comparison. So it could be decided that that number is adjusted by the council.
Okay, as time goes on, we can adjust that. Okay, and then just a couple of comments, I think, is this ever gonna end in our lifetime? I mean, how long are we?
I don't know. Okay. Now,
How long are we gonna be paying for this?
What I will say, what is happening in the 2026 timeframe is now that phase one has been defined, they have a set of capital costs, the financing has been secured, those facilities are under construction, which you all can tour if you have an interest in doing so. Now that that has occurred, the planning is starting for what does that next phase look like. From the time that I've sat before you 5 or 6 or more years ago, having this discussion, what phase 2 is still changing, in response to a variety of factors. So the timing associated with those projects, what those projects are, is still under consideration, and in general, the timelines have extended beyond the very earliest projections.
Okay. Okay, and then I just wanted to point out, like, for instance, with analysis number 1, which is the 3% and continuing the $500,000 per year, in 20 years, and I could still be alive in 20 years, easily, making my property tax payment, it will double, it will be double. And this is per unit, you know, so if you have 2 units on your property, you know, it adds up. And that always surprises me, is that there's not more people here, especially people who own apartment complexes and several duplexes. This does, it does add up. It doesn't seem like a lot, you know, year after year, but it's compounding. This interest compounds. And then I think I had one other question. I'll think about it, whether I'm actually gonna ask it or not.
Okay, so I did look at, scenario 1 and scenario 3, the 2%, as being the best choices in my opinion. I'm a little bit leaning toward, option 3 with the 2%, because of what you stated, the rates going up, and it still keeps us very solvent. It also saves our reserves, in case we need them, because there is quite a bit of unknown out there in this. I think also too, at the end of this 2 years, it gives us an opportunity to kind of reconnect and kind of see where we really are with phase 2. I know that that's in the very beginning talks right now. We're still finalizing phase 1. And so I'm a little bit more leaning toward the 2%, because I think it keeps us, the agency solvent, while keeping our reserves and helping me, ratepayer, stay stabilized.
One of the advantages of keeping that pure water reserve there and for as long as we can and not drawing down it too early is that we're earning interest on that corpus. And so I would rather spend interest money and not taxpayer money. So I would support 3% through in fiscal 26, 27 and beyond, with a delay in pure water reserve. And I think that was analysis 3, which isn't one of the scenarios that are featured here, but that's the one that I'm most inclined to do. Any further comment or questions? I'll pass it down to Councilmember Alvarado.
Can you guys provide information as to what the reserve balance is? The reserve
for-
balance for pure water?
Yeah. The reserve fund balance projected for,
So if you have the reserve balance for both Fund 15 and for pure water, I guess that's important to know.
okay, so for pure Water Fund 17, the projection at the end of 26-27 would be $7,380,738. 25-26. So the projected fund balance this fiscal year would be $6,849,786. That's the pure water reserve. And for Fund 15, it would be $16,757,112. Do you want to note that the pure water, the Fund 15, the operating, has it looks like a high fund balance. If you look at our fund balance for Fund 16, we have a projected fund balance of $9,028.99, or 99 cents, sorry. $9 million is the fund balance for projected at the end of this fiscal year and carry into next fiscal year. But we have $7 million in capital projects on the books. So drawing down from that 9 million, leaving about 2 million left over. So ideally you would want to transfer more of that fund balance into operating into capital.
Thank you. I will, like to make a motion.
Just a recommendation.
Oh, recommendation, okay. I would like to make a recommendation to go with the 2%, which would be scenario 3 for 10-year rate analysis milestone. Assuming that the service water charge is 3%, I'm sorry, that's not it. Which was the 2% one?
The 2%, depending if you're looking at the PowerPoint or the backup material, but if you're looking at the PowerPoint, it is scenario 3, and then it has underneath it parentheses DWE analysis 5. The analysis 5 that was done as part of the attachment to the agenda report. So that's 2% through fiscal year 27-28, 3% beyond, funding capital, delaying pure water reserve.
Okay, so I will recommend to adopt analysis 5, assuming sewer service charge increase of 2% through fiscal year 27-28.
Can you pass it to Seth and we'll get his thoughts?
Yeah, for the compromise between, let's try to lay off our ratepayers while we can, while prices are high, and staying solvent. I think scenario 3 is a good compromise, and I would recommend that as well.
Councilmember Mendoza?
I'm starting to sound like a broken record. 12 years ago, when I first started on the city council, we were at 5%. And because we did not know, what this was gonna be. And, I pushed for, 3%, which I think we've passed, twice now. So we were at 5% for 5 years, and then 3% for 5 years, and now we're at 3% again for 5 years. And a lot of years I vote for no increase at all. What the 3% means for 5 years is that we can't go over 3%, but we can, as you see now, we can't go under. And, people are really hurting right now. The cost of gas the cost of food, the lines that we're seeing at, our food pantries is beyond, you know, what we've seen. And I'm inclined to, go lower than 2%. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, as stated before, I am inclined to support scenario 3, analyst 5, 2%, for this coming year, and then it increases to the 3% after that.
Okay, so I think we've provided sufficient recommendations at this point, and then we look forward to the next steps that have been laid out. Now we'll move, and I'll ask staff to confirm that that's enough. Good?
Yes.
Okay. I propose that we postpone council member reports until the next regularly scheduled city council meeting. I highly encourage everybody to deliver their council member reports to the city clerk, before the next meeting.
Calendar.
So item 1E is going to also be moved to, probably the first scheduled meeting in, July. That one can be held off until October. Okay, it's for the next meeting? Oh, the calendar, that's why we have to do that. Alright, so item 1E will be moved to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Do I need a motion for that one? I'll move to approve, rescheduling item 1E to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting. Can I get a second? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
So, next we'll move to closed session. We'll also skip the city manager report as well. Closed session. We will call on City Attorney Kristen Steinke to adjourn the council into closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. We are adjourned to closed session for 2 items. The first is conference with labor negotiator under Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency representative is Tony Winnie, interim city manager. Employee organization is Ask Me, Local 127. The second item on the closed session agenda is conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9D4 for one case. Thank you.